last thing I want to say to you, right, before the test, right. So next week, next Monday, oh, no, Micah, don't tape it yet. That was wrong. It's slowly. Very I got your homework graded. I usually give it at the end of the class. So be sure you collect it on your way out. And I will also go over the classroom very quickly towards the end of the class because I want to try to finish up what we covered today. Get you ready for the test coming up on Monday. Now, some of you have already asked me about the tutor service. We do have a tutor. He's a graduate student. I'm going to write this information on the board very shortly. So, the chapter 2, we're almost done. And let's look at the big picture. Okay, we talked about the nuts and all that stuff. Really? Okay. Oh, wait. Go back. 27. Wait. Okay. So tutors info. Name is Kwang Ho. He's a graduate student. Amazing guy. I think he had like about 3 concentration, computer science, finance, economics. This graduate this past spring. His hours are Wednesday and Friday, 2:30 to 5 p.m. You also have a Skype hours. Skype hours is from 4 to 5 p.m. His Skype account is UNCPK, and then I think that is correct. There's a space. Okay, and this is at BA 113. So use his service. I think that's all that I have here. Okay, gave all the details. I think that's all that you need there. He's also tutor for other classes as well, but basically for all the economics class, okay, ECN 2020, 2030. And next week, after our test, normally what I do is, since we have a little bit of time, so I want to let you know a little bit, has everybody signed their attendance? Where is it now? Okay, so please pass it around. So next week, when you go to the computer lab, which is at BA 106, right, for this class. Monday. You could practice the test. Basically, they are all multiple choice questions. There are 10 questions per chapter, sometimes 12 questions per chapters, and you could practice by going to the flash quizzes. Okay, they're not exactly the same because otherwise, what is exam? They are similar questions, and I have told you before that the test question tends to be a little bit more challenging. I tend to like to ask questions about graphs, questions about applied stuff, like math, calculus, instead of definition. Like, what is opportunity? So I would ask applied question. So when you read the book, when you see this thing called concept checks, right? It's a good thing to go ahead and do that question because guess what? The answers are at the back of the chapter. So you should do that. So let's finish this up very quickly. And then I'm going to go over your homework very quickly and then give it out to you, right? Okay, so, and when you get to the lab, there's one thing I should say. Please do not occupy the last row, the 2 corner seats. Because these are generally reserved for me and my student worker. I also sometimes have a student worker there to help me to proctor, so no one is cheating. if you bring your calculator, traditional handheld calculator, not the cell phone calculator, write this down. You get 1 extra credit. Okay, 1 extra bonus point. So remember to do that. Thank you, Henry. So, and when you log into the computer, it's telling you in advance some of these things. Please do not use Internet Explorer. It tends to give us a lot of problems. Like you might see missing diagrams, which is a huge loss, because you need to see the diagram to know the question. So please use the other two, which is Google Chrome's and what's the other one? Firefox. Yeah. So, all right. Basically, what we have studied so far, right? In chapter 1, we talk about opportunity cost. You should know the definition. You should know how to apply. So write this down. This is like the key concept. Okay, so you should know what is trade-off, what is scarcity principle from chapter 1, and you should know the 4 pitfalls. One of them is opportunity cost. The next one is the sunk cost, which is your homework answer is sunk cost. You have to say sunk cost. Okay, what's the other one? And then we talk about the difference between marginal cost and average cost. So remember, please, I would ask questions on the application of marginal cost and marginal benefit. So be sure you know that equation. Let's do a very quick review just on that concept there. So, and of course, there's this thing about proportion versus absolute value. Remember, we were calculating this ticket price. So we say, really what it matters at the end of the day is how much you save. The dollar value, in terms of dollar value, the absolute value, instead of the percentage saved. Okay, so now remember the marginal cost of the first unit. You need to know the equation. I'm not giving this to you. It's total cost, 1 unit minus total cost of 0. So the marginal cost of the second unit would be, somebody help me, total cost of 2 units, not the second unit, 2 units, minus the total cost of 1 unit. And so on. Let's do the third one as well. Marginal cost of the third unit is the total cost of 3 units, producing 3 units, minus total cost of producing 2 units, and so on and so forth. So now if I change all this C to B, so that means I'm talking about marginal benefit. It's the same. So this will become total benefit and instead of total cost. Okay, so be sure you know that. Okay, in chapter 2, we talk about the differences, the difference between absolute and competitive advantage. And I think, Morgan, you defined it for us the other day. And so could I still get could someone tell me what exactly is absolute advantage? You could say it in your own words. If you want to look it up, that's fine. Yes, is that Adam?
Yes, ma'am. It just takes less time for one person to do it versus the other.
Okay, so who has the absolute advantage?
Whoever takes the least amount of time.
Very good. Okay, there you go. Very good. And you could give example like, how fast you can eat a meal. That's not a good one to boast about, right? How fast you could run 5 miles or a marathon. How fast can you, yes, yeah, question?
With the absolute advantage, is that only limited to time itself, or does that also include the cost to which somebody might, like I could produce a stick for $5 and somebody else could produce it for $3, so would they have an absolute advantage? We may produce it in the same amount of time, but they can produce it for a cheaper amount, so do they have an absolute advantage over me?
Well, all things being equal, yeah. If you just count the numbers, yes, right. All right. So what about the other one, comparative advantage? Anybody?
It's based on opportunity cost.
Very good. Is that you, Tony? Did you say something?
It was me. Anthony.
Okay, Tony, that's you, Mr. Jerry's. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
What about opportunity cost? That is correct. Go a step further.
It's whoever opportunity cost is lower. They have the comparative advantage.
Very good. Very well defined. So remember what Anthony said. So sometime in the class, I say, remember what Anthony said, and some of you may remember. Okay. So we look for the lower opportunity cost, and remember how we calculate it? So let's go over that very quickly. Now remember this equation you have to know, I'm not giving this one to you. However, if one of you has very good memory on Monday, you remind me, I will give this one to you, the opportunity cost one, only this one on the entire semester. So what is the opportunity cost producing nuts? So let's say this is 1 and 2, what should be on top here?
Coffee.
Coffee should be on top, and nuts should be here because you want your final answer to be in terms of coffee. Okay, and then opportunity cost of producing coffee likewise would be 2 and 1. Correct? So you have nuts here, you have coffee at the bottom. We got 2 nuts. I'm skipping all the units. I'm just simplified it, but you could put in whatever unit. So then you say this is lower, right? You circle it. Okay, so now the most important one is the interpretation. So what are we concluding? If we check that, that means nuts is the one, nuts is the item that has a lower opportunity cost. So whoever who is you're working on it, this is Susan and Tom, then that person has a competitive advantage in producing nuts, not coffee. Okay, I'm telling you in advance because we have a little bit of time. Okay, next we go on and talk about, this wonderful thing called specialization. Now, you see about in international trade, we have trading partners. Who are some of our trading partners? Canada, Mexico, they signed this treaty called NAFTA. How many of you heard about NAFTA? North American Free Trade Agreement. This was signed during Clinton's administration with the 2 presidents of, the name of the Mexican president and then the Canadian, that would be prime minister, I think in the early 90s. So with the example we look at, we see that if you exchange, you specialize in something and then you exchange, which is the idea behind trading, then you do better. So now let's look at one more example. In this example, we want to look at, again, production possibility curve. Remember that the one that we have been looking at has a straight line. This one has a curve. In fact, we describe it as bow out, or outward bow. Not bow, but bow, because bow down, So now why is that shaped like that? So the reason it is shaping like that is because, let's look at the example. I do the calculation at the bottom for you. So we're looking at coffee on the y-axis, nuts on the x-axis. So moving from point A, where you produce nothing but coffee. Okay, in this case, 100,000 pounds of coffee. So watch the unit, be careful on the test. Be sure to answer according to whatever unit that's available there. So moving from point A to point B, you see that you have to give up how many units of coffee? You're moving from point A to B. You have to give up 100 minus 95, let's say 5, which is really 5,000, but 5 is good. In order to gain 20 units of nuts. So that's what it is. Okay, you want to gain 20 units of nuts, you have to give up 5 units of coffee. Everybody got it? From point B to, okay, so the calculation is right here. From A to B, opportunity cost of nuts, coffee has to be on top, so that's 5 units divided by the nuts value, which is 20 units of nuts. Everybody see that? So that's 5 divided by 20. Simplify it, it's 1/4. Moving down from point B to point C, we still lose. We still have to give out how many units?
5.
Same, the 5 units. In order to gain how many units? So don't say 30, because you remember it's between B to C now. So you're looking at this horizontal between 30 and 20. So in order to gain 10 units, you have to give up 5. So there it is, from B to C, opportunity cost of nuts in terms of coffee is you have to give out 5 units of coffee in order to gain 10 units, not 30 units. So be careful there, okay? So 5 divided by 10 is 1/2. The last one, we move very quickly now and down here, between D and E. Okay, we skip C and D, but we want to talk about this D and E because this is more on the vertical side of the bowl. Okay, let's look at D and E, and still we are losing, giving up another 5 units. But now you're only gaining about 2 units. So 5 divided by 2, I'm keeping all the numerator the same so you could see the difference. Every time you give up 5 units of coffee in order to gain less and less units of nuts. So 5 divided by 2, you got 2.5. So what do you notice, the trend? Moving from point A all the way to the end here. The trend is, it is? Higher and higher, very good, increasing. From 1/4 to 1/2 to 2.5, very good, increasing opportunity cost. So that's what it is, opportunity cost of producing nuts in terms of coffee. So you give out 5 units of coffee, let's see how much nuts you gain. Increases. This increases is talking about this number, 1/4 to 1/2 to 2.5. It's not talking about 20, 10, and 2. So be careful there, okay? Increases, as Chris rightly pointed out, that's an increasing opportunity cost as the economy produces more of them. So hey, then there is every reason, it's very justifiable to say, yes, we should go for trade, like specialization, especially if you have competitive advantage in producing cowboy boots, cowboy hats. Why should we let Mexico do that? After all, they are better at producing ponchos and tacos, that sort of thing. Let them specialize in that. Okay, the gains from specialization grow larger, very important, as the difference in opportunity cost increases. So all the more reason for you to do trade. So this is a theory behind why we have trade today. It all hinges on this specialization, the opportunity cost. So you see the application. Now when I'm doing all this, I want you to start thinking about your paper. I know that's coming up. September 26th is coming up very quickly. What's today? See, it's almost, what's today? 26th. That's exactly a month from now. You have a summary due. So when I give you all these concepts, start thinking towards that direction. What do I mean by that? Okay, do I want to do a paper on opportunity cost? So on that day, when I ask you, okay, look at all the concept that we have studied, which one do you want to do? Opportunity cost is a big one. And then you think about the industry that you are interested in. Don't do something for the sake of doing it, for the class. If you like football, go ahead. Find out what's the opportunity cost of having a professional football team in this town. Something like that, okay. So if you like recycling, if you like hunting, I have students who've done hunting before, fishing. If you like things like, what are some of the weird ones? I got a lot of students want to do renewable energy, that sort of thing. Environmental science with application economics. So specialization is one of them, but be careful, you have to be microeconomics topic, not macroeconomics. So start thinking towards that direction. Next, we say the principle of increasing opportunity cost. Now, we talk about that when we talk about supply curve, remember? How do we explain the fact that supply curve is upward sloping? Anybody remember? What was one of the, remember in terms of demand curve, we said, we got 2 theories. Because there's this thing called substitution effects, right? And then there's this thing called the income effect. Your purchasing powers has gone up. You feel like you're rich, so you can buy more things. So now when it comes to the supply side, how do we explain that? That supply side is upward sloping. Anybody remember at all? Your test is coming up. Oh, have you not done that? Oh, you have not done it, okay. I see. So your marginal cost or your supply curve, that's next week's lesson. Anyway, so your supply curve is upward sloping. We'll touch on that next week. From point A, B, C, D. Price and quantity. That's because you have increasing opportunity costs. So that was the explanation for why supply curve is upward sloping. We call that principle the low-hanging fruit principle. So what does it mean? Let's read it very quickly. When you expand the production of any good, meaning that as you produce more and more of the good, you first of all, you will use or utilize the resources with the lowest opportunity cost first, and then afterward, you go for the one with a higher opportunity cost. Now, it may not be very clear to you until I give some example. For example, if you own an orchard, apple trees, pear trees. So if you're selling them fresh, you say, come on by, I'll pluck the apple for you, and you just set up a booth right beside the apple tree, and when people come by, you just reach back and get the apple and put it here, say 20 cents or 25 cents, whatever. So you won't ever have to get up, so all you have to do is reach back, and pluck it. So at some point you look at it and say, whoops, all gone. And you say, oh, we got some higher. So you start to stand up, and then you pluck those apples. So now it's more effort now. You have to actually stand up. So to cut a long story short, eventually they're all gone. The one that are reachable with your height. If you're 7 feet, you got some advantage, of course, If you're like Henry, you got some advantage. If you got it, I can't. I say, come on, Henry, come help me, right? So now at some point you will need a ladder, right? This $300 ladder you could get from Lowe's. They're used for you to climb up to the fruit tree, safety. It's got lots of safety features, press this button, you go up, and so you could reach and start getting, well, let's just say you don't have money to buy that kind of state-of-the-art ladder. So you have to go to your neighbor's house and borrow it. A neighbor's house is about a mile away. You know how farming families are like that, they're very far apart. So you have to drive your trucks over there. Once you drive over there and you realize that, they have 2 pit bulls. So they're running after you, and there's no way you could get to it. And you try to get out, and you got bitten by one of the pit bulls. So very bad. Now, what you have to do, you have to call the EMS. They have to come and rescue you, bandage you up, everything, take you to the, you gotta get shot and all that. So finally, you done all that, okay? Coming back finally from the hospital, get all bandaged up from dog spikes, get back to the where you sit down originally. And there was still people lining up, waiting to buy your apples. Now you got your ladder, and you climb up, get those apples, bring it down, and put it on the front desk here and say, how much would this apple cost? Do you think it would charge 20 cents, 25 cents? How much would you charge? Henry, how much would you charge at that point?
More than that.
Much more than that, maybe $1, right? So that's what it means by low-hanging fruit principle. So first of all, you go for the resources that are easy to reach, and then eventually you go for something higher. Make sense, Patrice? It does? Okay, very good. Now, we have not talked about the shift in opportunity cost. So this is the original PPC. That's what it's shaped like. The traditional PPC is not a straight line because, the trade-off is not equal like 1 for 1, 1 for 2 a lot of time. So in math, we call that continuous instead of discrete. Have you heard about that term, discrete versus continuous math? So anyway, we said, remember one of the examples we looked at, we got a point called point F. And point F, anybody remember what it was called?
Unattainable.
Unattainable, very good. Somebody is paying attention. How do you get to unattainable? There are two ways you can get to unattainable. Have we learned? Yes, Hunter?
Specialization.
Very good. There you go. That's the correct answer. Very good answer. With specialization, we could get to the unattainable part. And in the case of Susan's example, she would have to work overtime to get to that unattainable point. It would be beyond that 6 hours. Okay, so how do we explain it so it gets bigger? Assuming that this is economy, you get coffee and nuts. So yeah, we're getting tired of this thing, you don't want to be the same years in and years out. So how do you expand it so that it becomes bigger? So there are a few things that we could talk about. That is, hey, hire more workers, right? Or hire a better harvesting machine. How about that? Maybe get rid of Susan and Tom, let it be more productive. So increase in the productive resources. This could be in terms of labor or capital. In terms of labor would be like you hire more people to work for you, right? Instead of just Susan and Tom, poor people, they work all day with all these acres. Or better still, get rid of all the manpower. Just use one efficient farmer and buy a state-of-the-art $10,000 John Deere tractor. It costs about $10,000 at least, right? So, right. So that's your capital right there. So this is not a class, I think we talked about lawnmower and tractor. I think this class I didn't mention that. So tractor is a capital good, okay? So then you could expand out further because then, hey, you realize it actually produces with a more efficient technology. More productive resources are being used, in this case, your capital. Improvement in knowledge and technology, that's sort of the same. Knowledge means, every year they come out better and better machine. These farmers have come a long way. There's nobody, you look out to the field in the cotton, they harvest the cotton sometimes in November, I think. So you don't see them hiring labor out there to pluck the cottons like in the old days. They only need one giant, huge tractor, that's it. Takes care of everything. Yeah, so we have come a long way. All right, so this is expanding the point here. So increasing productive resources, that could be in terms of investment in new factories or equipment or population growth. This population growth in the context in which it's discussed here will be like hiring more labor. Hopefully they're productive. They're not just idling, not doing anything, but just have their own coffee break every 2 hours or so. So you want to make sure they're productive. Improvement in technology, all that comes with a lot of research, education. So then then you have the knowledge to improve the technology. Like I say, they come up with a better machine. And of course, as Chris pointed out, right, Hunter, gains from specialization as well. Because not everybody knows it. If you've never taken economics, they have no idea. And then one day you come home and say, Dad, I have a new discovery. I have taken economics 2020. I realized that we could do specialization. Why don't we do it with our neighbor next door? They produce sweet potato, you produce cotton, and then you could exchange. How about that? So practice what you have learned. It has actually a lot of application there. How many of you have watched, is that Batman? Trying to remember which one, The Dark Knight. Okay, remember at the beginning? What was the beginning?
Which one?
Oh, which one? I think I say Dark Knight. I hope that's the correct one. What is the one they have this guy called Ra's al Ghul? Which
Batman
one is that?
Begins.
I'm sorry?
Batman Begins.
Batman again.
No, Begins.
Begin, okay. So at the beginning, the beginning scenes, you see all the snow, right? All the mountain scene. That was Nepal. Okay, so let's look at country like Nepal. We actually have a faculty from Nepal. So 2 years ago, they had an earthquake there. Okay, Nepal is a huge country. It's in the mountain, and it's not reachable. So we asked this question, why is that country like Nepal so slow to specialize? Because they have very low population density. What does that mean?
They don't really have the resources, right?
Okay, you could basically make that, well, or it's not as efficient as like big cities where everybody's kind of like, you know, you could gather people easily. You have to travel miles with, I don't know, horses or donkeys or whatever they use there to get to the next town. Or airplane, okay. So they're kind of like isolated. So in countries like that, now you could also compare to countries like, I'm trying to think of Scotland. Very similar. They're very kind of like mountainous. But you know, the population are more together. They have a higher population density there. So some of the factors that explain why one country is slow in specializing, the other factors involved will be like, okay, laws and custom. So if you look at China during the medieval age, that would be about the Song dynasty. So they believe in themselves as being the middle kingdom. So they do not want to do trade with people. So they built this wall, the Great Wall of China, to say, yeah, those people are barbarians, you know. We don't want to do trade with them. We only believe in ourselves. And that's not very good. So they were kind of like behind. Even though they were very good, they invented so many things like papers, gunpowder, that sort of thing, but their laws and the customs prevent them from trading with other people. So then there's limitation, you know, because you're not trading with other countries. You don't have specialization. You got what you have. You're trying to be self-sufficient, but other countries got what you don't have. Okay, now you could get to, so what is the solution here? Specialization become easy when population density passes a certain threshold and the markets are connected. Satellite, internet, transportation for goods instead of horses and mules. You might have a Jeep, you know, four-wheel drive, better transportation, faster, or use twin engines, airplane, something like that. Communication for services. Okay, the legal framework supports business. So some of these things are important. You gotta have the environment. You have the government that supports it. So because sometimes people don't want to do trade with you because you say, oh yeah, you don't have a legal system behind. So if something goes wrong, yeah, this food smells good. So if something goes wrong, you know, you can't really do anything. You can't really take people to court, you know, in terms of business. So then you lose. So we need a good legal framework. Financial Markets Act enables startup. I was teaching in Singapore for 9 years before I came here 10 years ago. The country of Singapore is an island country, very efficient. The government had experienced surpluses every year. 40% of the savings come from household. Very impressive, you know, their GDP growth is phenomenal. So the government actually, about year 2000, they tried to encourage online business, you know, encourage people to do internet, open up internet company or online companies online. So the government had this incentive to say, well, if you want to be a startup, you know, online startup, and the first year that you're losing money, you are experiencing red, we would cover it. They even exempted from paying taxes, so that's wonderful, you know. So if the government had this kind of support, then you're more likely to go for it. So let's talk about specialization and stretch it a little bit further, see where is the limit. Let's look at it. Your hairstylist only cuts blonde hair. Ooh, that's very specialized. An expert in tropical disease opened a practice in town of 500 people in Wisconsin. What's wrong with that?
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin, it's not tropical. Tropical disease in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Jump off in Wisconsin.
Right, because you don't have tropics in Wisconsin. It's a cold, I think they have a very long winter, so wrong place, right? Wrong specialization. 7 bookstores each open a different day of the week. That would be bad for our bookstore, right? You have to make an appointment and say, are you open right now? Would you open just for me so I could come by and buy the books in time for the class? So, you know, you could have too much specialization. Okay, we talked about NAFTA a while ago. There are some good and bad coming out of it. A lot of people were against NAFTA, even though we know behind economic principle that trading is good. One of the reasons they were behind is because they say, oh boy, you know, we're giving the job to the Mexicans or to the Canadians, okay? We're losing our market. So to cheap labor, that's usually one argument. But then on the other hand, if goods are produced in USA, they actually would cost more. If you look at, well, take a look at your clothing if you want. Look at your labor behind. What is it making? Make in China, Costa Rica. Look at your skirt. Look at your T-shirt. Look at them and see. Tell me what their way they make of. Most of them are not making USA.
China.
We got one China. Where else?
I'm gonna just assume this is China.
My tag is
Not all China. Philippines, Costa Rica, Indonesia sometime, Philippines, yeah.
Nicaragua.
Okay, mostly like third world countries because, I shouldn't say third world, developing countries. Because, you know, you got cheaper labor there, basically. But if you see anything that's making USA, usually they cost more because you got laws that protect labor, you know, you got labor law. You hardly see anything that's produced in France, right? Or in Germany, because that would be very expensive. Yeah. Their minimum wages are much higher than our US minimum wages. Okay, what about NAFTA? Potentially large gains from trading with different and distant countries. Controversial. It is, it was, it is. It still is today. Okay, although it benefits societies like Canadian side or Mexican or US, but you know, there are always certain sectors that are not so happy. People who lose a job, the American workers who lose a job as a result of NAFTA, it will be against it. So typically, that's the problem with government policy. There is not a perfect policy making. There's always, next week we'll talk about that, there's always this thing called, okay, you will benefit one group, but then on the other hand, inadvertently, you also harm another group. That's very typical of any government policy. You cannot please everybody. You try all your best to minimize harming other people, but helping a bigger group of people. So when we look at chapter 3, we'll have more example on that. So the next thing I want to talk about is outsourcing. How many of you have heard about this word outsourcing? Okay, where did you hear it? Morgan, where did you hear it? If you remember.
I was trying to think of the word to use. Like IT help companies will outsource. Like if you call, okay, so like if you, like a help line. So if I have problems with my cell phone and I call Verizon, it'll be outsourced.
Okay. So you're talking about example, but when did you first hear about that word? Is that because in that context you heard about it? Must be in that context.
Like
yes,
help.
Hunter?
Kind of specifically centered around cars. I've always been a car
Okay.
fan, so understanding when cars started being made overseas.
So in other words, most of you had come across that term. What about Ruben? What about you?
I already have a bachelor's degree in the Netherlands, and it's about communication.
So you came
in
across that
communication
term
business,
before,
yeah, it's
being outsourced. Okay, very good. So there it is. Most of you had heard about it, but not everybody. And I would thought, well, maybe you have heard about it from other classes, but I'm glad that most of you heard about it from experience, in the context of your experience. Medical transcription, that's outsourced to India a lot. Customer call center, you get that all the time. That's what you're talking about. HP computer support they outsource to Philippines or Nicaragua. A lot of time we ask them, I ask them, where are you from? Where are you calling? One time it was Costa Rica, somewhere in South America, Peru, I think, Peru or Argentina, I forgot which one. One other time it was like Philippines. Medical tourism, that's actually my research area. Yeah, I study outsourcing healthcare in other countries. I visited a lot of hospitals in my lifetime and doing research, and I believe in outsourcing healthcare to help people. Cheaper cost, and a good example would be like if you do hip replacement or knee replacement, that's very common. About 40,000 in this country. If you do it in India, I think it's about 6,000. Singapore, about 12,000. So a lot of people, especially middle income people, go for it. And a lot of times the services are better. You get more attentive service. But then there are other hindrances. People also mention other things. So we talk about it here. What are some of the limits? Outsourcing. Quality control. They may not have the same regulation. Do they have HIPAA? How many of you know what is HIPAA? Okay, very good. When you walk into the doctor's office, remember a lot of time it's very easy for you. You just pay your co-payment, right? That's it. You walk out. After you walk out, this lady who sit in that front desk or who just served you had to file the insurance. That's a lot of work there. And when you first go to the doctor's office, they give you a lot of forms to sign. One of them is a HIPAA consent form, that you give consent for them to provide your medical records to your loved one or to other doctors. So you have to sign that form. So, other countries may not have that. I have been in a country, I will mention to you what country, where the doctor was my dentist, and so they were treating me, and then in the middle of it, they brought in another expert with two other ladies. They were talking about the color of the white. They have so many shades of white, so they are discussing which shade of white should be provided for my teeth. They were discussing it in the language that I understood, and they didn't know I understood that language, because I do speak quite a number of languages. And that was not good, because I knew what they were talking about. That was like, violating HIPAA. They don't have it in that country. Physical presence haircut, I don't think you could outsource haircut to India. You have to be physically there, and complex communication, that happens a lot of time. Even doing webbacks with distant students, Skype interview, there's always some technical problem there. Understanding nuance, that's a hard part, because you have to actually know the language, know the culture, and know the context to understand when people say something, is it really what it means, or you have to read in a little bit more. Okay, the greatest security for workers is the ability to adapt quickly to changing circumstances. I think that's the last one I have. So before I give this homework out to you, I'm gonna explain the problem quickly, and then I'm gonna give it out to you and So, the first question, we asked about the calculating economic surplus. So the answer should be, the benefit is minus the cost. That's your economic surplus. So this should be $7, this should be 4. So the answer is 3. Okay, if you get -3, the answer is wrong, because it has to be positive. Well, about 70% of you got that. The second question's about the two ladies losing $20. $20 is $20 in no sunk cost, period. So if you mention that, it should not be any different as to one lady would be more likely, have to read the question very carefully, than the other lady. So their decision should not be different, because both of them are sunk. Okay, thank you very much. On your way out, see if I can do it very quickly. If you have questions about my grading, ask me after the class.